Hi, and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name, the program Focal Point, the network. AFR Talk, the American Family Radio Talk Network. Now, here's all you need to know. This is all that is important for you to know about the new Pope. I'm going to read you some quotes from him. This is all you need to know about the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church. And I understand that we've got theological differences with the Roman Catholic Church. Many of us do. If we didn't, we'd be Roman Catholics. If they didn't have differences with us, they'd be evangelicals, they'd be Protestants. So let's all accept that as a given. We have some profound theological differences. But this is what he said about sodomy-based marriage. He said it is a move of the father of lies. So here's the Pope, leader of 1.2 billion Catholics around the world, says that same-sex marriage is a deception that comes directly from Satan. This is a movement that is inspired and driven by Satan himself, by the father of lies. He also referred to same-sex marriage as a total rejection of God's law. So that's the Pope. Same-sex marriage is a move of the father of lies, and it is a total rejection of God's law. Right on, right on, right on. And in 2007, he referred to abortion as a death sentence for unborn children. It's a death sentence. It's capital punishment for unborn children. This is exactly why we oppose the rape exception and the incest exception. We understand sometimes it helps legislation get through, and if you can save 90% of the babies, it's probably worth doing. But we never want to settle for that. We don't want to stop there. And the reason we say that we should make no exceptions is that we just do not in America punish an innocent baby for the sins of its father. That's just contrary to every concept of jurisprudence. And so when you have a baby put to death because he's been conceived in rape, you're executing the death penalty, death punishment, capital punishment on a baby for the sin of its father. We just don't do that in America. He also referred to same-sex adoption as a form of discrimination against children. So again, this is exactly right. It's a form of discrimination against children. It harms them. It hurts them. It deprives them of something to which they have a right, which is to a mother and a father. They're being deprived of that. A right is being taken away from them. Every child needs, deserves, and has a right to be raised by a mom and a dad. So I give a shout out to the new Pope. He's pro-life, believes that abortion is a death sentence for unborn children, believes that gay adoption is a form of discrimination against the most vulnerable among us, and believes that same-sex marriage is a move of the father of lies. Now, President Obama's had some real trouble. This is clip one, Rob. We can get that ready. President Obama has had a real problem lately with plunging poll numbers. I mean, they've been going through the basement. He's got poll numbers that are virtually at all-time lows. Here's a piece in the Washington Post yesterday. Obama's approval drops as Americans take a dimmer view of his economic policies. This is in the Washington Post. John Cohen, Karen Tumulty, the afterglow of President Obama's re-election and inauguration appears to have vanished as increasingly negative views among Americans about his stewardship of the economy have forced his public approval rating back down to the 50% mark, according to a new Washington Post ABC news poll. Now, what Washington Post is not telling you, his approval rating is the second lowest for a second-term president at this time in his presidency since World War II, since Harry S. Truman. His approval ratings are in the tank, and he's got problems on the sequester. 3/4 of the American people say that they are feeling no impact whatsoever from the sequester, and over 60% of them support the sequester. They're not cuts, but they support the reductions in the rate of growth that are a part of the sequester. So all of that hype and all those scare tactics simply are not working. His numbers are plunging in New York. He's at a 19-point swing in the last month in New York. He's lost 19 points, gone from approval rating of 66% down to 56%. His disapproval rate has gone from 32% up to 41%. Altogether, that's a 19-point swing. So his numbers are in the tank. Democrats are starting to get worried about their electoral chances in 2014 because they can read the polls just like you and I can. This is Washington Post, ABC News. Their credentials on the left are unquestioned. So if they say that his approval is dropping, then you got some real worries out there among the Democrats. Democratic strategists, this is according to U.S. News, Democrat strategists are increasingly worried about the decline in President Obama's job approval ratings. We're not panicking, but it's a source of concern, a senior Democrat told me. That's Kenneth Walsh, the writer of the piece. They got a new McClatchy-Marist poll. It's even worse for Obama, only 45%. In Washington Post, it was 50%. In this McClatchy-Marist poll, his approval rating is 45% and 48% disapprove. In other words, he is underwater. And Democrats are now starting to fret about their chances in 2014. In fact, a lot of Democrats are now believing that the biggest problem that they have getting elected in 2014 is not the Republicans, but it is President Obama. That the biggest obstacle they've got is not a Republican opponent, but President Obama and the damage his policies are doing to the country. Now, Jay Carney was asked this question by Mara Liasson from NPR yesterday. This is clip one. And she says, look, the recent polls, plural notice, have shown that the president's job approval has taken a hit. And so she says, I'm wondering whether you think your efforts to explain to the country that this is the Republicans' fault have fallen a little bit short. Here's what Jay Carney said. Here's the exchange.
I would say a couple of things. First of all, as I say repeatedly, and as we experienced together communally, be careful of making too much of any individual poll or even a series of polls. I would also say, if we refer to the latest, the Washington Post or ABC News poll, that the president at 50% job approval is about where he was when he won re-election overwhelmingly with 332 electoral votes. So, I'm just a layman in making that observation.
So you heard the reporters laugh. They laughed at Jay Carney, because Mara Liasson asked him, look, what about these dropping poll numbers, recent polls, plural? And Jay Carney says, well, you don't want to make too much of a single poll. And she says, look, it's hard for you to hear her, but she interjects and says there is a series of these. There is a series, I guess it would be singular. There is a series of these polls that show his approval rating going into the tank. And he says, well, yeah, even if you're talking about a series of polls, and all the reporters laughed at him. Now, when we come back, Rob, I want you to grab clip 17. This is where President Obama is talking to ABC George Stephanopoulos about the cancellation of these White House tours. You probably have read about this, but I want you to hear the sound bites. They've had a real issue about whose fault this is. I've got a story from a Secret Service agent, retired Secret Service agent. He says, look, there is absolutely no question that this is the White House's doing. The Secret Service, we work for the White House. We work for the president. He's the boss. We're not the boss. We don't tell him what to do in his own house. So if the tours are canceled, he's saying, look, it's obvious. There's no question that this has come from the President of the United States. So we'll play those sound bites. And Jay Carney, President Obama, not even on the same page. You'll hear President Obama blaming the Secret Service, and then you'll hear Jay Carney saying, no, the White House did this. And again, President Obama, by blaming it on the Secret Service, you realize with this guy, nothing is ever his fault. He's always the innocent guy that's striving to do his best against all these dark, evil forces. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.